Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Lion, the Way, and the War, where we discuss Jesus, his church, and the spiritual battle that surrounds us all. My name is Craig Allison, and I'll be your host. All right, so I have been looking forward to having today's guest join me for a discussion for quite a while now. Trevor Reish is joining me today, and he and I go back at least 12 years, maybe a little bit longer, when he was one of my first student directors at the Christian Student Center. We don't call them student directors anymore. We call them student ambassadors. Trevor grew up in Middle Tennessee and came to the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, which is where he met his wife, and he's been married now for about 8 years. Since being married, Trevor has lived in Memphis, Washington, D.C., and is now living in Cleveland, Tennessee. He and his wife have 2 children, a boy and a girl, and Trevor's finishing up with his master's degree in counseling, and I believe will be working in the educational system, school counselor. Mm-hmm. He's currently teaching an elementary class at church, and in his spare time he volunteers at Isaiah 117 House. Trevor, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's great to be here.
This is a long time coming. I'm going to enjoy our discussion today.
Oh, I'm sure.
Before I forget, because I didn't know, what is 117 House? Isaiah 117 House.
So Isaiah 117 House is an organization where basically instead of kids who are being taken out of bad situations, instead of going and staying in the office of like a DCS worker, and instead of like sometimes for days, they go to this place called the Isaiah 117 House, and the house is furnished with beds, furniture, TVs, Switch, Xbox, PlayStation, like just all the snacks, all kinds of food, toys for little kids, just all this stuff that can really help kids have a little bit, like, not as bad of what's potentially the, one of the worst days of their lives.
Yeah.
And so what I get to do as one of the volunteers, the child care volunteers, is I get to go and just hang out with the kids, play with them, and, just try to give them something else to think about. And I get to be there for them for, whatever they need. So
yeah,
it's pretty cool.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember early years and years ago, back in my career, I worked for the Department of Children's Services, and having to remove kids from custody and find placements for them. And I can tell you that I figured it was something like that, but I can tell you that there was never enough places like that. Mm-hmm. Working for the state and children coming into state custody, and it's good that there's something like that before, like as an intervention before that actually happens. Mm-hmm. So good to hear. All right, so you've been married 8 years. It's still weird for me to think about you as a dad, because you were this little punk kid back, and it's just like my brain explodes thinking that you're a dad now. So yeah. How's that going? How is it? How's fatherhood?
It's great. Obviously, like, I love my kids, and to get to pour into them and love on them and be there for them, it's just the best thing, Now it's not without challenge, it's not easy.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be easier. I think I overestimated myself a little bit, but
right, we all do.
Yeah. It's amazing, and I'm just starting out. I've got a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and the biggest thing is, just I want to make sure that I give my kids as many opportunities as they can get, but yeah, and raising them to love God and to love others, and yeah, it's been great.
Yeah. So I want to go back in time a little bit and talk, some maybe perhaps for you foundational stuff. Your time as a student director, the Christian Student Center. Mm-hmm. What do you believe? What impact did this Christian Student Center have on you? Was it just something that you kind of fell into? Was it purposeful? Did you expect to have like a meaningful experience there, or just share your thoughts around that?
So I started out at the Christian Student Center because I was just getting out of a relationship, and I knew that if I didn't get into something, something good, that I would, I don't know, I would be very sad, and so I started getting involved with campus ministries, and the CSC was just the one that kind of stuck with me, or that I stuck with. The people that I met, some of my best friends, I still talk to a good bit of them.
Yeah.
And, just one of the things that I kind of picked up is just the need for good, godly community, and to surround myself with that, and how important that would be if I wanted to keep growing as a Christian. And especially, in today's world, if I wanted to keep my relationship strong with God, I needed people to help me, and that I could lean on, and also be there for them to lean on me if they needed me. So, yeah, it was great.
I feel like you did enjoy your time at the Student Center. I think that first group that I had as for the student directors, you guys were, you were an interesting bunch of college students. I never really knew quite what to expect when I walked in each day to work. There were times when I got out of my car in the parking lot, which was, probably 200 yards away from the building, and smelled gas. And come to find out, I walked in and that gas was coming from our facility. You remember that, right?
Yeah, I do. I do remember that.
But you guys were, just in hindsight, I mean, you were kids, just like almost like babies. You had a full head of hair.
I did
back then too. Speaking of kids, we pulled up a video of you at the Student Center. Can we pull that up and play that? This should be interesting. I think it's gonna play right there.
So I'm in timeout because apparently owning a dog is frowned upon in this establishment. But luckily I had this puppy underneath my pillow, and I can check CSC events and see what time lunch is and everything. And whoa. Oh, I see. Solitary. Just a man in his thoughts and his smartphone with a CSC app. Nobody knows.
Just a man. So you were in a baby crib. You were literally in a baby crib.
Mm-hmm.
What's that about?
Well, you see, I had to, honestly, I don't really remember what it was about my facial hair. I guess I shaved for wrestling in high school, and then at some point in undergrad, when I was at the CSC, I had to shave because I worked at Chick-fil-A. But for whatever reason, people just thought that I could not grow a beard. And so they called me Babyface, and I guess that I just leaned into it with that ad. That was one of our videos, I believe, like introduction videos.
Yeah, it was.
And I just said, okay, it's fine. I'll just lean into it. I'll become part of the joke. So it was great. And then of course now, I've got this to kind of go along with it. So
it seems like, and maybe I'm wrong, I recall you grew a beard. That was like a spiral or something. Did you do that? Like a monkey tail beard?
Oh, I shaved one day. Yeah. And I shaved it into just being goofy. I know it's out of character for me, but
yeah.
I did that one time.
Nice. Yeah. I remember that. So I wanted to ask you, so you've gone through the Student Center, you kind of saw what that was about with just being rooted and grounded in a spiritual foundation. Now that, you've over a decade has passed, you've been married, you've got children. What are your thoughts about the direction of young people today, specifically high school and college-aged kids in relation to their spirituality? Have you seen any like major shift or changes that jump out at you?
Yeah, and it's been really interesting, and there's kind of pros and cons because there's a lot of stuff that's thrown at kids these days, and it's hard to expect them to not kind of jump into it, and it's not great stuff, but at the same time, so that's really bad for the vulnerable, the kids who would jump back into it. But at the same time, the kids who kind of have a little bit more resiliency, it's kind of been cool to watch them, their faith be strengthened because they've had to stand up for what they believe in.
Yeah.
So, it's really easy to kind of just focus on the bad, but I wanted to focus a little bit on the pro side of it too. And it's been great to see kids. I volunteer not only with the elementary class, but with the high school, middle school, and high school kids on Sunday nights at my church. And we were going down to it was some kind of event for where like our students from all over the campuses came together, and they were just talking to me about some of today's hot topics, and it was kind of blowing my mind some of the opinions that they had, because I kind of thought that kids are they're gonna just kind of fall for a lot of just kind of whatever, and they were telling me that they've kind of had to stand up for what they believe in, and of course I was proud of them, and so it was really cool to get to see that there are kids out there who are doing that.
So these are kids though that have a spiritual background. They're in a church, setting type thing. So, what do you think differentiates the kids that have that resiliency versus the ones that don't? Like, is there something that's taking place in their background that maybe makes one kid more resilient than another?
Yeah, I think that being involved, and I know some of these kids, they're not crying out to be involved, but their parents are, kind of pushing them to be involved. And, speaking of their parents themselves are involved in their kids' lives. And, it's just having that family to kind of be around you. And then on top of that, the church, and I can speak for the kids that I spend time with, they have a community of the church that are pouring into them, checking on them, and making sure they're doing all right, asking them, if they need anything, and including them too. There's several kids from our we call it the link. There are several kids from the link who help out with production. They help out with Sunday morning with the preschoolers and with the infants, and they're just so involved. And so I think that's one thing that's really helping them kind of live it out more.
Yeah, you bring up, that's an interesting point, Trevor, because, when my talking with college students and getting information from the types of churches and youth programs that they come from, one of the things, the common denominators that I see in the kids who have that resiliency, want to stay plugged in to their spirituality, to grow their faith, are the kids who are being included in the dynamics of church. And, there's a lot of programs, a lot of youth programs where it's like, we're going to do our adult stuff. We're going to, you kind of have a place over here as a kid. You stay in your box, you stay in your classroom, you stay with your age group. We'll take care of the actual church stuff, the important stuff. And it's, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm like putting pieces together that don't go together. But I feel like what I've seen is that kids that come through those programs where they're made a part of all of the important stuff, where church leaders are asking them to take part in committee meetings, I mean, being exposed to that level of like the church decision-making process. Not that you're going to have a little kid making decisions, but, they're just part of the important stuff that's going on. Those are the kids that are really invested And when they leave home and they go to another place, they understand the importance of spirituality, of faith, of staying plugged in. And it sounds like that's kind of what you're seeing on your end too.
Yeah, and I mean, you hit the nail on the head, because as a school counselor, one of the things that we learn, one of the big things that we learn is have, whoever you're counseling, the student, have them help make decisions and come up with goals. Because, maybe I as a school counselor may be a little bit more informed, but it doesn't matter how informed my goal setting is if the student is not invested in it. Mm-hmm. And so having the kid help to set those goals, they're like, oh, that's my goal. They own it, and they're invested in it. And so I think that carries over into kind of what you're saying with having the next generation involved in the church that will be theirs, the community that is going to be theirs. So, yeah, having that involvement definitely, having them being invested, I think it helps a lot.
Yeah, I think churches too have this tendency to say towards their younger kids, the younger generations, you're the church of tomorrow, but really they're the church of today. They're they should be included. They should be part of the church now. Not like they're, your time's coming. You're not really part of the church right now. Your day will be here. I think that gives kids the wrong impression about their place in kingdom work, right? In discipling others, in feeling like they have a place and a part to play in talking to people about Jesus, standing up for biblical principles, which leads to that, the challenges that come their way and determines maybe how resilient they respond to different things.
Yeah. I believe Cody Hedgecoth said something about that on your show here.
Yeah. Okay, so looking back, any regrets on your part? Like when you think back about your faith walk, your spirituality during your college years, as a student and as a student director, if you could go back and change anything, would you? Like Trevor today, if you were going to give 18-year-old Trevor advice, well, you started at 17, didn't you?
I don't know. It was pretty young. I got to start as a student director my freshman year. The circumstances are kind of different.
Yeah.
And so, I got to start a little early. But let's see, something I would change. I, both spiritually, with the CSC and just academically too. Yeah. I wish that I had a little bit more of an aim. Mm-hmm. I wish that I had something that I was kind of specific that I was more so working towards. And then just as far as, just in general, I know that being a student director almost turned my spirituality into a job. And I really wish that I had taken some actions to kind of change that feeling. Yeah. Because it kind of crippled my ability to be the most effective that I could be. Yeah. So, I wish that I would have, I guess, just thought of it less, as a job and more of like just, helping out others and loving on people and, really just what we need to be doing as Christians, you know. So I probably would have done more dishes had I thought about it like that. So, but that's just one example of, something that I wish I would have done a little more of.
Yeah. That's hard to do both as a young person trying to figure out their college career. And then, being a student director, that's a lot of responsibility too. When you stop and you think about what it is you're actually doing, and it's hard to confuse the mission part of it with the job part of it to understand, you've got a job to do, just the ins and outs of maintaining a physical asset, a building and all the stuff that goes with that. But also, taking on those leadership responsibilities that are really speaking to people's spiritual needs. And for a young college person, 18, 19 years old, to wrap their brain around that, that's a big challenge. So, I felt like you did a pretty good job. I mean, other than almost blowing up the building, I felt like you did a pretty good job at
I
it.
thought we determined that wasn't me. Maybe not. Okay. For the whole time, I did think it was me, by the way. And I was like, oh my gosh. Ugh. That's one of the things that I look back on, and I'm like, thank you, God, because that was wild.
That would have been a tough one to explain to the church leadership. Why is the building gone, and half the block? What happened there?
Yeah.
So a question here for you: were there any life-changing events that you can recall specifically while in college and at the CSC? Again, blowing up buildings removed from. I'm going to stop harping on that. Really, that's like what was the biggest main event that you can recall as a student at the CSC?
Being able to drink, what's it called? Dry ice drinks at the frozen night. That was pretty life-changing.
I had no idea where you were going with that.
Oh, because I started with being able to drink?
Being able to drink, pause. I was like, okay, what's happening now?
No. Yeah, there's a couple big things that I can think of. So, I got baptized.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that.
I do remember that, yeah.
I believe Miss Shirley it was me, you, and Miss Shirley, I believe.
Yeah.
Maybe David. I'm not sure if David was there.
I don't recall if he was there.
I think it was just me and Miss Shirley. But that happened. I got to baptize my mom.
Yeah.
That was pretty.
That's a big one.
Yeah, that was a lot of answered prayers with that one. And then, I met my wife.
Right, Leah, in physiology class, right?
That's right, our physiology lab. Yep, I was late to class, and one of the only open seats was one up front next to her, and I sat down next to her and asked her if she'd been my lab partner, and she basically said, "Well, do I really? I don't really have a choice, So yes." I was like, "Okay." So, yeah, I mean, some of the biggest moments in my life now that I think about it.
Yeah.
So, yep.
That said, what advice would you give a young girl or guy that's finishing up their high school year and about to start college?
That's a big one.
Yeah.
Advice to a young girl or guy that's about to start college. Just, I guess, be open to God's plan, live for Him, and, make plans, have goals, but just really be open to Him and what His plans for you, because we can make all the plans in the world, but ultimately it's going to be His plan, so, and accepting His plan when it happens, that's one of the biggest things. And that's not to say, don't try, because whatever you do is it doesn't matter. That's not what I'm saying. You've got to put some effort in and, make plans, but be okay with His plan when it happens.
Right.
So,
yeah, I think that's really good advice. I'm always really moved. I want to use the word proud, but that like puts too much emphasis on me because it's God's directing lives. But I'm just always really pleased to know that the group of student directors and now student ambassadors that are kind of my small group, because I don't deal with all of the students at the ministry. I deal primarily with I work with the leadership team there. Mm-hmm. That the vast majority of you guys have stayed faithful post-college after you've graduated. And that, I mean, I don't know if you know the statistics on that, but you guys, as a leadership group, when I go back and I look 12 years of student ambassadors / directors, the vast majority of you guys have stayed faithful, and you're one of them, and so I can't tell you how full that makes my heart, to know that that you guys are still loving God and loving other people and trying to bring other people to Christ. So all that said, what I want to ask you now that you're, the other side of all of that, what do you feel like is the biggest challenge that's facing the church today?
I think that there's so much emphasis on the self, live your truth, as long as you're happy. And I've heard it from kids that, that I've talked to, I've heard, you see it everywhere.
Yeah.
And the Bible teaches the exact opposite of that. And, a lot of times people go on feelings instead of the truth.
Right.
And it's really easy to hide the truth and to, say, well, I feel like this and I feel like that. And, I'm guilty of it too. I've been guilty of it, especially, in undergrad. I think of times that, I thought, I feel like God's, leading me this way, but the way that I was feeling like he was leading me was completely contradictory to what the Bible teaches.
Mm.
And, just because I have a strong feeling about it, like, that's because I want that.
Yeah.
And so, I think that we need to, when I was an undergrad, a lot of that was starting as, I'm a Christian, but I don't go to church. That was a lot of the stuff that I heard.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you just heard that, you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense, because the church has done some stuff in the past, so I understand, some hurt, some church hurt, but
I'm spiritual, but not religious.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like, when you first hear it, it's like, oh, okay, sure. Like that makes sense. Religion has done some bad things, but that's not the way that we're called to live as Christians. We're called to live in a community. We're called to worship God together, and be there for each other as the church. And so, I think that the church needs to get back to, his people need to get back to the truth, mm-hmm. and having an actual deep relationship with God through reading his word and through focusing on the truth. And, that's it.
Reading his word, but, and like I was going to ask you as a follow-up question, so how do we do that? Mm-hmm. You said reading his word. I've had a lot of conversations with college students that are eat up with that whole, your truth is your truth, and, do what makes you happy. And God wants you to be happy. And so, his grace abounds in all things. So, live life and enjoy life and have fun and feed yourself what you want, because ultimately that's what is most important is that you're happy and God wants you to be happy. So this whole like mindset and truth is just this very subjective sort of thing, right? Mm-hmm. But they've taken that and kind of married it with their own form of spirituality. So they actually think that they are being, this upright, spiritual, righteous person by serving themselves. Okay, so if I go to them and I say, hey, that's actually not truth, you need to read your Bible. You can imagine, what if I said that to you as a college student, right?
That's so hateful, man. Like, how can you say that to me?
But there's truth to that, right? I mean, I get that and I understand that, but you deal with kids. Mm-hmm. You know what they're being taught out there right now. The influence of social media and all of this stuff. The toxic stuff that they're exposed to nonstop. As older, more mature Christians, okay, who have the concern for this younger generation of what are some things that church leaders need to be looking out for to kind of change that paradigm and actually be able to reach this generation in truth and love and show them, that's actually the devil trying to make you think that that's, what it's about.
Yeah, well, kind of like one of our conversations earlier. We kind of talked about relationships and I agree with what you were saying, and we need to. I think with non-believers, we need to show them that we love them. We need to be, and this is something that I've been trying to do a lot recently, is just basically be, or this is the kind of perspective that I've had, is basically being the vessel for God's love, and taking that to people, to the church, to non-believers, and just letting his love kind of shine through me. I'm not perfect, and I don't do that perfectly, but that's kind of the mindset that I've had recently, is just trying to be his love and be his light. And I thought it would be more difficult than what it has been, because some of the kids that I've been talking to, they've been very receptive of someone who just genuinely cares and who wants, what's truly good for them, and as far as fellow Christians, if my thought on that is, if someone's going to claim to be a Christian, kind of start with that and say, hey, look, you're saying that you're a Christian. Let's look at this then, as a fellow believer, let's look at this. What does this say about it? What does the Bible say about this? Because, I'm coming to you out of love, we're representing our God. Let's do that the way that he tells us to do it. And so kind of just taking them back to the word for it.
It's a real interesting thing when you go back into church history and you study, especially post-resurrected Jesus. So very early on in the first century, going up through, 300-400 AD, where you had this transition piece of the church. The pagan emperors at that time, some of them, were very embittered towards the Christian community, who they actually called atheists, because they weren't believing in the pagan gods of the time, and the emperor at that time was making comments like, we need to be more like the atheists, speaking of Christians, because they are loving and serving our people better than we are serving. And so it's this idea of going out and being, to the world, a reflection of who Jesus was, which was to meet people where they were at, to not castigate them or be automatically on first glance divisive and say, you're wrong and you're sinning, and you were probably here at UTC when they had like the street preacher out there just screaming at people. The lady, yeah.
Yeah, I remember her.
That's like, if you're trying to bring people to Christ, I can't think of a worst way to do it. Instead, Jesus was being completely inclusive when he was healing. I mean, he healed people that were clearly living in sin. He fed people. Somewhere along the way, we've lost that. It's like, I'll feed you and clothe you and provide you services and love you as long as you believe kind of what I believe, okay? But if you're on the fringes of society, if you are living a lifestyle that I don't agree with, well, sorry, buddy, and here's what's going to happen to you when you die. And that's just not how Jesus really approached that situation. So, I don't know, Trevor, is that a message that church leaders need to hear that would resonate with this younger generation who are being fed a bunch of lies about truth?
Yeah, I think that as a culture, we tend to swing like a pendulum. And so even like Christian culture, and it was hellfire and brimstone for a little bit. And now it's swung, your truth, your love, just, God is love, and I think it's starting to swing back too. And I think that we just have to be careful not to take it too far.
Yeah.
Kind of like what you're saying, where it's like, hey, believe what I believe, or, you're done.
Yeah.
But kind of coming to, actually where Jesus is coming from, where it's love in truth.
Yeah.
And so, especially the leaders in the church and the Christians, we have to be able to, and it goes back to just the relationship, having real relationships with each other, and actually loving each other, giving each other the benefit of the doubt, and, being able to go to each other and call each other out, and say, hey, what you're doing, that's not what a leader needs to be doing, or a leader to, the believers. Hey, like, I love you, and I want you to have a deep relationship with God, and this is how you do it. But I think that there does need to be love there, and that kind of everything that we do has to be out of love, even the hard things, even the difficult things. But yeah,
man. Okay, so first of all, I mean, you've hit on several points. And approaching people to tell them truth, right? You should be doing that out of love and graciousness and humility and all of that kind of stuff. Having a genuine thing. Some people are a lot better at communicating those feelings than I am, okay? But I've seen this, like, even the most gentle, compassionate person that I can think of, and I've got a person in my mind,
mm-hmm.
gets massive pushback, because he genuinely does go to people, and he loves them. I mean, he's just a righteous man, not perfect, but, if anybody was going to come and rebuke me, he would be the one that I would want to come and rebuke me,
mm-hmm.
Because I would be like, wow, okay, yeah, I need to get my act together. We just don't, the church, we don't like to be corrected anymore.
Yeah.
How dare you correct me,
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of a scary place when I stop and I think about it as church members, that we just don't like to be corrected anymore. And if you correct me and you say, I've done something wrong or I've sinned against you, well, guess where I'm taking my contribution? I'm leaving. I can find another church.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that happening. I don't know that it's a pervasive thing, but I think we've definitely. When I say we, I'm talking about my Generation X, and then the following generations are really teaching that type of attitude towards their kids, where it's like, you can't do any wrong. You tell them my kid messed up. No, my kid's perfect. Don't you get onto my child.
Well, I think it's it kind of falls back on, okay, like, what do you want? Do you want to be right, or do you want to be good? And it's like, are you open to ways that you can be better, or do you think that you have to prove that you're good? And it's just, I think that it's like a mix up of priorities, and I think that we've got to get back to, no, like, I want to be good, and I'm not perfect, so there's always going to be ways to improve. And so, being open, and that's what I'm talking about, the relationships, being open to people who love you.
And have your best interest.
Because you can't always see everything.
Yeah.
You need different perspectives, and being a father, like, I'm really seeing that,
Yeah.
My kids, I was worried that me telling them, hey, you know what, you just need to trust me, that wasn't going to be enough. But that needs to be enough, because they do need to trust me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not just asking that out of nowhere. I love them. I would die for them. I would do anything for them.
Yeah.
Not anything, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I mean, like, bad stuff. I wouldn't, like,
I got
but they, as their dad, they need to trust me sometimes, because I'm the one who has their best interests at heart more than anyone else, right, other than, maybe my wife.
Yeah.
So that isn't, we need to, we need to have those deep relationships, and then we need to lean on them and trust in them. And when someone comes to us and rebukes us for something, maybe trust that, okay, that person has my best interests at heart. Maybe I need to look at that, because I want to be better, not because I have to be right or anything like that. So,
I was thinking about this the other day. We had, texted some stuff back and forth, and it got me to thinking, okay, so how many times have I been rebuked by my brothers or sisters within the church setting? Not many. And that speaks, I think, to a couple things. First of all is I need to do a better job at building relationships so people feel more comfortable coming to me when they see me doing something that's leading me away from Jesus instead of towards Jesus, right?
Mm-hmm.
And coming to me and say, hey, man, can we sit down and talk? Because I've seen you do this, you said this, you did this, and, that's just out of line, man. And, I want to pray with you. I want to talk to you about this. I want to see if there's anything I can do to help walk with you out of this situation. I can count on two fingers. I was going to say one hand, but I can count two times in my entire church experience that has actually happened where I've had a person do that. So I think there's a couple takeaways from what you're saying. First of all is I need to do a better job at the community aspect, building relationships so people feel comfortable doing that. The second thing that I think is really important, aside from the fact of how you approach a person, right? I mean, because that's really important, is to make sure that you're in a place where you can correct a person. I mean,
mm-hmm.
if you're coming to me and you're going to talk about a drinking problem that I have, you saw me out at a bar and I walked outside and threw up all over the place and I'm just drunk as a skunk. And I know for a fact that you're doing the same thing every other weekend. And you come to me and you're like, dude, you need to stop drinking, man. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, why are you telling me this?
Yeah, no, that's funny because that's actually one of the things that I was going to say is, it might not necessarily be that you're not approachable, but also, people don't like their stuff coming to light, and so if I don't call them out, well, maybe they won't call me out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that's
so we're all just running around minding our own business because we don't want to get called out either.
Yeah.
And that's not good for the church.
No, we need to, and it's, and kind of like what you were saying with, well, I can't call him out because I'm not perfect. And, there's kind of two sides to that. So it's, I don't want to call him out because he might call me out, but also, well, I'm not perfect. So who am I to call him out?
Yeah.
Like, you're my brother.
Yeah.
That's who you are.
Yeah.
Like, call me out. I need it.
Yeah.
I need you to, and that kind of leads into the next point that I was going to make, which is like confidence, like being confident about calling someone out. Mm-hmm. And
it's uncomfortable though.
It is. But that confidence comes from two things. One, like being confident in what you're saying is right. And two, confident in how much you love that person. Do you love them enough to say, hey, what you're doing is not matching who I know you want to be. And so, we just, I don't think people take the time to actually think about things as much as they used to. Mm-hmm. And this is getting a little off topic, but there's so many distractions. And, if people just sat down and thought about stuff, pondered stuff more, they might come to these conclusions a little more often, maybe quicker, and maybe we wouldn't be in such a bad spot. But
yeah, good thoughts. There's a lot here that we could unpack that we're not going to have time to do. But I think just hitting the surface of this, and for the listeners out there, I think this is good stuff to stop and think about as far as where where you're at, your attitude towards being corrected, and your attitude towards maybe correcting other people that need to be corrected. As church, we're talking about within the church. Okay, mm-hmm. I need to make that clear. All right. last question, Trevor, for you. Any unique insights as far as the spiritual dimension of fatherhood? Now that you've experienced fatherhood, I know I have a lot of thoughts about that, but I'm just what as you became a father and the spiritual dimension of that, and knowing God your father, kind of understanding what that means to be a dad, right? Mm-hmm. Like any like epiphanies that have taken place.
Yeah, something that I've kind of thought a lot about is, like I love my kids so much, like I want them to be happy. I want them to have all the opportunities in the world. I want them to have a rich and fulfilling life, but more than anything, I want them to have a relationship with God. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that means that I prioritize that over things that people of this world think shouldn't be prioritized over. Mm. And so I think that as a dad, as a father, like I've realized that sometimes it looks weird, but I have to be doing things, and I have to make decisions that lead them towards that relationship with God,
right?
Over things that are more materialistic.
Sure.
And so yeah, that's one thing that I've really thought about, and because I want them to be the when they're playing sports, I want them to be the best at that. I want them to be proud of that, have high self-esteem because they're good at it and all that. But their relationship with God has to take priority, and I have to be doing what I need to be doing to set that example. So,
yeah, really good insight there. Yeah, this has been a good conversation today, Trevor.
I appreciate it.
I've enjoyed the sitting down and talking with you about some stuff that I think is real important. Hey, listen, if you're listening to this episode and you like what you hear, share it, like it. I think it's beneficial information to get out there and to let other people hear the types of things that we talk about, because we talk about real struggles and issues that we all face as Christians, as dads, as wives, as husbands, all of that. So we cover the gamut of it. Appreciate your insight into the things that you shared. You're gonna close us out with a verse in 1 Corinthians, I believe. So if you would, just share that with us, and then we'll wrap things up.
Yeah, so this is 1 Corinthians 13:13. And now abide faith, hope, love, these three, but the greatest of these is love.
Yep, that's the Bible in one word, right? Love. Until our next podcast of The Lion, the Way, and the War, love one another, be kind to one another, and remember, the Creator of the universe loves you so much that He gave His only Son for you. Have a blessed day, everybody.